Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Traveling in 2020. My name is Laura Depesh, and I am the manager of social media here at Bursch Travel. Today with me, I have Ms. Peg Martin and Jill Ward. They are our travel extraordinaires from Sheridan, Wyoming, and Wake Park, Minnesota. We talked about Mexico a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk about it again because this time these two have just returned from trips on the East Coast and the West Coast. So we're going to hear a little bit more about their specific trips, and they're going to try to pull us in a certain direction for our spring break. So Jill, I'll start with you. You said you headed east. Where exactly did you go and why?
Well, we flew to Cancun and stayed in the Riviera Maya. And part of our reason for choosing that area was because there were nonstop flights from Minneapolis. We like the white sand and the pretty blue water. And there are a lot of great all-inclusive resorts to choose from. And I had many clients over the summer and fall travel there with no issues. And I wanted to see have that experience as well so I can tell my clients about it firsthand.
Sounds good. Peg, how about you? What drove you west?
Well, we went to Puerto Vallarta this year. I have a group that I travel with every year, and we had gone to the East Coast to Cancun for the last 2 years, so they wanted to try out a different part of Mexico. And Puerto Vallarta has such a wonderful town and the mountains. It's so beautiful. You get a real taste of Mexico in Puerto Vallarta, and it's very authentic.
Oh, both sound great right about now, especially since I'm in Virginia. It's raining, it's cold, I'm ready for the warmth. Jill, any tips or tricks as far as getting to Mexico? Were there any COVID restrictions, or did you have to take a test? What were kind of the hoops you needed to jump through just to get there?
Well, that's the nice part about Mexico. They do not require any COVID tests as of today. And we did get tested before we left just to make sure we didn't have it upon going there. But need to go through, nothing was required, just the standard form that you fill out on the plane before you get to customs, and it made it real easy.
Okay. How about you, Peg? Was anything different? Or I think you had mentioned when we were talking earlier that there were temperature checks and things along the way that they were making sure that everybody coming through was healthy.
Yeah, they did. They did do our temperature checks, and everybody had to wear a mask, of course, on the plane. There was no alcohol served on the planes, either going down to Puerto Vallarta or coming back, so that's something to be aware of. And I would recommend that you take your own little snack because they don't give you much on the plane. But the travel was very easy. It was very streamlined. There weren't a whole lot of people, which was nice. And once we got to Mexico, it was just very fast and through immigration and through customs. They did take your temperature as you came into immigration, but it was very smooth. I was really pleased with how well they had it organized.
And Peg, did you use private transfers, or once you landed, what were the steps that you took to just even get to the hotel?
Well, they did have arranged a private transfer for us because we were a group of 24. I had 24 people with me, and we all traveled together. And they put us on a bus. We could sit wherever we wanted. We could space out. And, you know, they gave us the whole spiel about Puerto Vallarta and what to expect at the hotel, so there weren't any surprises whatsoever. I do recommend taking the private transfers, one, because they're quicker, and two, it's just you and your traveling companions in the vehicle. It's worth the extra few dollars.
Fair enough. Jill, what about you? Was there anything different, just even in Cancun itself or within the surrounding areas? Beaches open or closed, or maybe even coming down to, you know, the activities during the day? Was everything available, or things kind of pared back?
Well, I think since the resort, when we visited, was at about 50% capacity, there were a few things pared back. There were plenty of beach chairs and pool chairs, which was nice, and they were spaced, you know, apart to be socially distanced. but they did still have some activities around the pool. A little more quiet maybe than normal, but otherwise it was pretty much like normal.
Okay. And same for you, Peg, on the West Coast. Anything different in Puerto Vallarta or excursion wise?
Well, Puerto Vallarta was on a very tight restriction at that time that we were there, the week we were there, and the beaches closed at 3 p.m. and they just put a piece of tape up so you didn't go out to the beach, but people went out to the beach to have their pictures taken for sunset and stuff like that. There was nobody hassled them or anything like that. The pool and pool bar were open until 8:30 at night, so it wasn't like you just had to go and sit in your room or anything like that. The restaurants were restricted as far as what tables you could sit at. They were assigned, but it was all in all, it was just a very nice experience. There weren't a lot of people there like there normally are, and like Jill said, you didn't have to run out and reserve a beach chair or a pool chair at 7 o'clock in the morning. There was always space, and that was actually quite nice.
And I stalking your Facebook. Sorry, I can't help it, Peg, especially when you're traveling. Looked like you guys were out on a catamaran.
We were, yeah. We rented a private catamaran and went out to snorkel, and then went to a private beach, and it was just us. It was absolutely beautiful, and it was it was $100 a person, and you can rent the whole thing. You had to have a minimum of 15 people, but it was well worth it. It was really, really wonderful.
Now, are those things that you think, if I'm going to show up, I want to go on a catamaran, do I just walk up? Or I've got to assume that, especially now, planning early is probably the name of the game. Right, Jill?
Yes, I think you should try to reserve those things early. You can't just assume that they're going to be readily available upon arrival. There are some things that you can probably still book upon arrival. We took a excursion over to Isla Mujeres. We did have our transportation set up in advance from the resort to the Cancun ferry terminal, but we purchased our tickets for the ferry right on site. And then when we got to Isla Mujeres, just walked outside the terminal, rented a golf cart and drove around, and no advance reservations were needed for that.
That sounds so good right now. I say this with everything. I'm like, oh, guys, you're making me want to travel even more. Let's see, Peg, any little tips or tricks that you learned along the way that, our future travelers should know about?
Well, it's a very different experience traveling right now. You have to wear masks. There's extra steps that you have to go through, and you often have to wait a little bit. So I just would suggest that you take your patience, you take your kindness, and you go travel. Just be smart about what you're doing, and have a great time. There are things that you might not be able to experience completely, or, like Jill said, make your excursion reservations early, because those are operating at a lessened capacity also. I also would recommend that if you're planning to go for spring break, that you book as soon as you can, because the resorts are not operating at full capacity, and they will fill up. So maybe have a first, second, and third choice, and be flexible. You can be flexible with your dates, the number of days you travel. I would recommend that you book as soon as possible, and always, always, always book travel insurance. It is unbelievable to me that people would travel now without some kind of travel insurance.
Yeah, especially
not only for protecting the money that you're spending, but also for if something happens and you need help to get out of the country. Absolutely.
Jill, any tips or tricks for you? I think you were mentioning QR codes, or there was something about your phone that you wish you had.
Yep. Everybody should make sure when they travel out of the country that you have the cell phone service that in Mexico, that your phone does that. A lot of the restaurants, or all the restaurants at our resort, wanted you to take a picture of the menu with your phone, use the QR code to get the menu. I mean, they have regular menus too, but less to touch is better. And same thing at the airport on the return. They ask you to do a health form upon departure from Mexico. And sometimes they'll give you a little piece of paper, but sometimes they want you to do that on your phone as well. So it's good to make sure your cell phone works in Mexico for many reasons.
Perfect. Well, thank you ladies so much for the tips. Peg, I think you've got a customer. I don't want to make them wait any longer either. But appreciate your time. I will be game for either East or West Coast, as long as I get my non-stop flight according to you guys. So have a great rest of your week. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and I'll be calling you for my spring break. Bye, guys.
Happy holidays.